So you see at letter A, so he doesn't even bother with putting anything in the viola part. See, this is the viola part right here. And by the way, typically the solo part is between the strings and the rest of the orchestra. That's usually where they put the solo line in a concerto. It's usually like right there. So that's how you can read it faster. So look, the first tutti moment has no viola. Still no viola. You see, there's no viola line there. This is cello, bass. Right here is timpani. PK is timpani. And then look at this, measure 18. Bam, it comes back. But then when there is the orchestra coming in, notice how it's like just clarinets and bassoon, like one bassoon and two clarinets. But there's the illusion that that music is from the previous music. You see, because if you look at the motives there, beep, buddy, buddy, bada, right? It's the same motive from this but you just like made it a lot more miniature so that you still have the illusion of the orchestra as an accompaniment, but you don't have all these people playing. So it's like a shadow. Really, really, really good orchestration. And then when the strings come in, notice how, what do you notice about that, Abraham, and the strings? When the strings finally come in with the viola, what are they doing?
Just accompanying, like answering, basically.
Answering. Yeah, be more specific. Answering.
Uh,
So this pitch here is on the downbeat, but then this da da is off the viola. So it's not like in unit, it's not like happening at the same moment. So you still hear this da 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 da. See how on beat one there's nobody playing, ba ba da ba. But then as soon as the downbeat comes, da 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 da, then there's like material there. It sounds obvious, but that one rest makes a big difference because it creates the space, but then you still hear the orchestra in the background. So you have to like structure your concerto, like whatever you're writing. You have to like structure, you have to like be very careful to structure it that way because if you have moments that are too long, they become a cadenza, but then you can easily incorporate these little things from the rest of the orchestra that are just off like whatever melodic passage you're writing. And
mhm.
this just happened in the first three pages, right? Like all three of these scenarios happened. You had the solo, you have the tutti without the viola, and then you have the solo viola with kind of a homorhythmic passage that's very small in terms of balance. And then you have these answers. Did you count how many textures that was? Count with me. This is really important, by the way, when we're talking about orchestral music. Count with me. This part here, will we count that as a texture? Yes. Okay, that's texture number one. This part here, do we count this as a texture at A? Texture number two. Now, somebody tell me, when does the next texture happen?
I mean, when it's like the solo with the orchestra, like in the before B, like two
This
before B.
part, right? That's texture number three. Is there another texture on this page?
I will say like letter B as well because the strings are.
Yeah, that's a little tricky. That would be number four, okay? Because this one is more what I call homorhythmic, right? They're playing the same rhythm, whereas this one is more polyphonic. There's two independent lines happening. So you have four textures on three pages of music or four pages of music. Like if you think about it, those are the only four textures you can have in a concerto. That's it. Cadenza, solo type of thing, tutti orchestra without the soloist. Then you have your solo with the homorhythmic passages, and then you have your solo with your kind of more polyphonic passages. What else is there? That's basically it. So when you think about it like that, like more in a macro perspective, it gives you more freedom to like figure out, okay, where do I want those moments with the tutti? Where do I want that cadenza kind of feeling? And then where do I want those homorhythmic versus polyphonic kind of feelings? When you're like looking at these scores, like think about like what I like to do too, because I don't know if you guys know this, but I like to use highlighters, and I'm like, well, like I have highlighters, and I'm like crazy with the colors and stuff. I learned this from my teacher at Juilliard. He's like really into doing this kind of stuff, and it really is very clarifying to show like what are the big shapes that are happening. So like if you printed out the score, right, or just even printed out the first movement, it doesn't have to be everything, and just like took like a highlighter of different colors and just map out like okay, like even if you just like highlighted where is the viola playing, and that's it. Like even if you did that exercise and tried to identify how many times does the viola play alone, how many times does the viola play with an orchestra, how many times does it not play. If you just even do that by itself, that will inform how you're writing the music, and it will like be in your subconscious. For those of you that are looking at this measure, maybe trying to figure out what's going on. So like when you're looking at this, like this top note is F sharp, okay, and then we have A sharp up there. And if you look at the way that this is a G looks like, and a B, so these notes are above the middle C. And if you look at what's going on in the clarinets and the bassoons, you'll notice that these pitches are actually higher. So like Abraham, for example, when we're talking about balance, there's two things that we're thinking about. There's the macro balance, like these four textures, and then we think about micro balance, macro versus micro balance. Let me explain what I'm talking about here. So when you see this melody here, you have F sharp, then you have A sharp. Look at this. Is there an A sharp up there? No. So the viola is singing over the woodwinds. Look at the next one. This is a G and a B. Okay, let's look. Is there a B? No. It's singing over. And then look at the last one, G sharp and a D. Okay, so what do we have here? Do we have that high D up here? No, we have the G sharp. They spell it A flat, but it's the same, right? So there's like this higher note that's above these notes that's singing over. So that also helps create like this singing sensation over the homorhythmic texture. And then you also have a glue. What's the glue? Anybody with this and this?
The rhythmic idea?
The rhythmic idea is one piece of glue. Is there another piece of glue? I hope I'm not losing anybody with my explanation here. But is there another piece of glue between this and this besides the rhythm? Alex, yeah?
Is it the lower note is basically the same as the top clarinet?
Beautiful. Yeah, exactly. So you see the bottom note here is F sharp. Again, I know it. I know not everybody's comfortable reading alto clef, but if you write for the viola, you're going to have to get comfortable quickly. I'm sorry. You can't get around it, but you have F sharps. You see on the bottom there, that's what the clarinet is playing. You see the G's, the clarinet is playing that. You see the G sharp, which is the same as A flat. That's the glue. So you got glue in terms of the rhythm. You got glue in terms of the bottom pitch being played by the clarinet. So they're literally in sync with each other. And then on top of that, if you want to add another layer of how these two things work in terms of balance, anybody here, what instrument would be the closest in timbre to the viola besides the strings? The clarinet. And what's like the most famous example of a clarinet blending with the string section? When I show you what it is, you guys are all gonna say, "Oh yeah."
Prelude to the Afternoon of a Faun?
No, even
That
more
opening?
even more obvious than that.
Yeah, the Beethoven 5. Yeah, it starts with the clarinets and strings.
And can you really hear the clarinet in that opening?
No.
Not really, right? You know why? Because you see, there it is.
Wow, that's I never knew that
Isn't that
actually.
wild? Yeah.
Uh-huh.
So it blends so well. That's why. So the clarinet is a great like glue mechanism between the strings and the orchestra. So Hindemith using the clarinet, that wasn't his idea. Beethoven did that first. It's really cool. Clarinet is a great instrument to blend between the strings and the orchestra.